The weather is really bad, and it is raining heavily. The main character works at a bookstore. I'm afraid there may be no customers today because of the weather. What would you do if someone forgot their umbrella? The protagonist thinks they may need to stay somewhere until the rain stops. And by offering them a warm place and being kind to them, he will also buy books. Now, in heavy rain, a mysterious woman can be seen fighting alone on the road, defeating multiple thugs. She was able to take them all down with her, but she's still injured and thinks she needs a place to hide while she heals her wounds with self-heal. Then she stumbles upon the hero's bookstore. She didn't know if it was a trap for her, or if it was her destiny to be able to go in and hide while she waited to be healed. Upon entering the bookstore, her protagonist greets her warmly, praising her looks and her bravery in going out in her terrible weather. He plots in her mind what books she might need and how many books should be sold. He also provided her with towels and switched on her heater, which she was suspicious of. He didn't have the usual accountant vibes in, so she begins to think he might belong to an enemy faction. She was a bit confused as she wasn't sure if it was an ally or an enemy in disguise. Still don't understand exactly. He offers her her seat and a hot drink and tells him that she was the victim of her betrayal, but to have different thoughts now. She's still trying to figure out if he's the enemy, and he's trying to figure out her situation so she can sell her book. After mentioning that she had been deceived, he wanted to encourage her by saying that perhaps she should learn something positive from it and learn to understand people better. He said he was right, but he had already lost so much that he now only sees the ugly side of humanity. So he gave her another piece of advice, saying that she shouldn't feel remorse for people who have already hurt her, even if they were close to her before. However, she accompanies him and asks what else he should do, and he tells her to seek revenge. She must not be kind to those who hurt her. In his mind, he's still pondering strategies about what to tell her to prepare to buy a book from him. But she's surprised by this answer. He wants to learn more. I told her that I might need to buy this book. She was surprised again, and now even confused. Because I don't understand why he suddenly recommended her to her when he was just about to sell hers. After all, it's good for his business. She agreed to buy her book, and he gave her a library card to fill in. After seeing her name, he realized that she was the only daughter of a wealthy tycoon. We realized that we had another big business opportunity in the future. As she was leaving, he gave her an umbrella, and she told him they might get to know each other a little better. He then realized that his business strategy was flirting with her. He realizes there's a chance, but it's better to go with the flow. So he tells her his name, Lin Ji. Innocent, I'm happy that he managed to sell the book today and made a good fortune. As he walks down the street in the rain, I think he probably killed the traitor and ordered him to come back to return the umbrella, but he did this. Rear. However, a mysterious man suddenly appears behind her, but before she can learn more about him, she learns more about the past of the main character, Lin Ji. I found an old book. Memories of the past awakened in him. He loved to read books and worked with him, a normal guy whose girl did not understand him at all. After returning to his house, in his room, he can see the magic ring that Rin himself summoned shortly after. Defeated, his wishes to let me own all the books in the world. As soon as I walked through the door, the creator realized that he owned all the books in the world, however, cannot return to Earth. He passed through the door without hesitation and lived in a different world for 3 years as Book Lark, but it didn't bother him at all. He loved it because he could read an infinite number of books and helped his customers with their living situations by providing them with real books. Do you remember the woman who just bought the book from him and realized that she had no customers but her for a long time? Now back to her and her mysterious man on the street. She passed right by him but noticed something was wrong and couldn't move her hand at all. At that moment, the mysterious man turned around and said, her blood ran cold when she realized something about this man. It was still raining heavily, so I returned to Lin Ji sitting in the library at. The new visitor was a mysterious man from before, but the protagonist already knew this man. His name is Old Wild, and he was there to return a book he borrowed earlier. Two of her began talking about the book Old Wild had borrowed, and Linji said the book was written by a great writer who died in his. The girl bought this from the outside, and she realized that Old Wild was a high-level black mage with the rank of Destroyer. Series had for series of unusual panic, destructive and indestructible. Old Wild, whose real name was Frank Wild, was famous for the mask he wore as a half-snake blood magician. He fought with one of his 10 Holy Knights of the Order, destroyed an area 10 kilometers wide, hence the title of Destructive. There are not 10 destruction wizards in this city, and there are less than 100 in the world. Back at the bookstore, Lynn decides that she's a regular customer of Old Wild and should be treated accordingly. Old Wild was a lone wolf, but he had 2 children, and they treated him poorly. His wife left him, and his co-workers feared him because of his looks. Lynn remembered when he first met Old Wild 2 years ago. When his Wild first entered the store, he had a mystery book that captivated the protagonist both with its looks and demeanor, and was also of great value. Rin offers him tea, but Wild refuses because he looks ominous and doesn't want to wear the robe. I changed my clothes to look spooky. However, because of the mask was wearing, Lynn found him a stranger and more frightening. Lynn activated her busiest mind to find the best way to make a regular customer. So he first asked him about the book the old man brought him because it's a book about magic and dying languages. Wild was surprised because Lynn was able to sense magic from the book, not even other destructive mutants. From the beginning, our girl suspected her Lynn. She decided to act cautiously when she became. They began talking about the book, and Wild pretended not to know much about it, but he said he was learning these languages, and then asked Lynn to tell him more about them. This is a big business opportunity for our protagonist, and he wildly encourages him to read a new book. This book was about China's most complicated dialect. The name of the book was Satanic Language, which Old Wild immediately understood and was very excited about. Lynn was delighted that the book had attracted people's attention and asked Wild how he had obtained such a rare book. Lynn was unable to tell the truth that the book was from his original world, so he had to lie and said it was from a great civilization. Rin felt a little sad about being able to return to Earth. However, Wild felt nostalgic for Lynn's voice when she described this ancient and glorious civilization, and thought that if Lynn was from this civilization, he was probably a terrifying individual. After returning to the present, Wild said that he had started new research thanks to Devil's language book and needed a new book on the subject. Lynn was completely unaware of Wild's intentions.